Good evening, all the joinees. Hi, I am Gaurav, and I welcome you to NGEN Markets webinar. By the time others join in, let's have a look at the topic for today's webinar. Today, we will have a look at mutual fund analytics. We will see the performance comparison of the fund with its peers as well as its with category averages. And then we'll continue with the relevant benchmark. Then we will go forward with the asset allocation, rolling returns and the rolling returns distribution. Lastly, we'll understand the drawdown analysis and how to create various scenarios and the options that are available for generating reports for the client. Post that, the forum would be open for a Q&A session. You can either unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you could just write your questions in the chat box. Let us begin the webinar. So this is the NGEN Markets landing page. Before moving forward with the fund analysis, we will understand the multiple ways to load a single fund. So the first way is you can go to the funds tab here.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hi, ma'am. We'll take all the questions towards the end. Will that be okay?
Actually, आपकी voice बहुत कम आ रही है. Voice की problem थी कोई.
Actually, we are able to. We've just done an audio check. The voice seems to be okay. Can anybody please confirm if they are also facing the same issue? I think we have Ashi from our team. Ashi, is the audio loud and clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, it's clear here also.
All right. Ma'am, I would request you to please check your audio settings.
Okay.
All right, Gaurav, we can go ahead.
So to load a single fund, we went to the funds tab here, and then you can see the filter categories option here. So you have the 4 buckets here as per the asset classification. You can just select any one category. Let's say we'll take large cap fund and then close this pop-up. And now you can see all the large cap funds are loaded in the list here. So if you want to open a fund in a single tab, you can just click on the name of that fund and it will be opened in a single tab. So coming back to the NGEN Markets page, another way to load a single fund is to going to the compare section. In this section, you have this add groups option here where you can add a SEBI category. So for example, we'll take large cap. You can input large cap here and now select on that category. You can see all the large cap funds are being loaded in the compare section. So once these funds are loaded, you can see the data for these funds is showing since inception. So if you want to do analysis for a particular period, you can go to this return columns option here and then click on the settings button. Once you have done that, you can see there is a start date option here. If you want to do a 5-year analysis, you can just input 2019 year and select a date in June month and then click on go. Now you can see it is running and now it will show the data for the past 5 years. The third way to load a particular fund is to go to the search funds option here at the top of the screen. You can just input the name of the fund here. Let's say ICICI Pru Blue Chip. And you can click on that particular fund. You can see that single fund is loaded here. So now we'll continue with the fund analysis. You can see I have loaded ICICI Pru Blue Chip Fund. You can see all the details like the ISI and asset class category here. Below that, you can see there is a start date option available. So if you click on change, you can enter a custom date, or if you want to do a 5-year analysis, you can just click on 5 years here. So now the data will be loaded for the past 5 years. And here you can see the benchmark that is loaded is Nifty 100. So now the funds comparison is being done with Nifty 100 as the benchmark. If you want to do this comparison with its relevant category average, you can just click on this engine option here and then input the name of the category. So the relevant category is large cap. So we'll select large cap. Now you can see the fund's performance is being compared with its category, that is large cap fund. So continuing with the benchmark that we had originally selected, that is we'll go to NSE tab and then select Nifty 100. Now you can see the fund's performance is being compared with the benchmark Nifty 100. If you scroll below, you can see this fund performance chart where the blue line signifies the fund, whereas the black line represents the benchmark. So you can see there is a clear outperformance here. The fund is outperforming the benchmark. If you see here in the performance statistics, you get the cumulative return. This shows the absolute cumulative return for the time period that we have selected. So the fund has given a return of 141%, whereas the benchmark has given a return of 110%. If you scroll below, you can see CAGR and you can see the date that we had selected above, that is June 2019. So this is showing CAGR for the past 5 years. The fund has given a CAGR of 19%, whereas the benchmark has given a return of 15%. So you can clearly see that the fund is beating the benchmark. Next, you have the annual volatility. This shows the standard deviation of the returns from the average or the mean returns. Also, it signifies the risk. So the fund has taken a risk of 17%, whereas the benchmark has taken a higher risk of 20%. So taking lower risk, the fund is giving a better return as compared to the benchmark, as you can see here. If you just scroll below, you have this cumulative axis on benchmark, which shows the cumulative axis return that the fund has given over and above the benchmark. That can also be uh, called as alpha. So you can see it is showing 30% here. If you can derive at this just by subtracting the cumulative return of the benchmark from the cumulative return of the fund. Also, you can see this cumulative performance in the form of a graph. You can see that the fund is underperforming in some time period before 2022. If you just zoom in at that period, you can see the blue line is of the fund and the black line is of the benchmark, and blue line is currently below the black line. So the fund is underperforming in this time period. But whereas you can see after 2022, the fund has constantly beaten the benchmark. Next, we will have a look at the up capture ratio. This ratio basically shows how the fund was able to catch up to the benchmark when the benchmark was increasing in case of a bull run. So if you just click on this I button, you can see that this ratio takes into consideration those months where the fund where the benchmark has given a positive return. So for the month of June 2019, you can see that the fund had given a return of 0.54, whereas the benchmark gave only a return of 0.09. So the fund was able to beat the benchmark in that particular month. If you just take the CAGR of all these returns, you'll get at the value of this return, that is 58.83, and for the benchmark it is 58.93. To derive at the up capture ratio, you can just divide 58.83 by 58.93. So this ratio signifies that the fund was able to catch up to the benchmark. In case if the benchmark was increasing by 10%, then the fund was increasing by 9.9%. So the higher the up capture ratio, the better it is. Whereas for the down capture ratio, the logic is completely opposite. It shows how resilient a fund is when the benchmark is falling in case of a bear run. So if you just click on this I button, you can see that this ratio takes into consideration only those months where the benchmark gave a negative return. So if we compare the returns for, let's say, May 2020, you can see that the benchmark gave a negative return of 2.14, whereas in the asset, that is the fund, gave a negative return of only 0.51. So the fund was quite resilient in this month. Also, if you take a CAGR, you will get at these values of minus 34.60 and for the benchmark minus 38.92. Similarly, you can calculate the down capture ratio by dividing minus 34.60 by minus 38.92. So this basically shows how resilient is a fund is when the benchmark is falling in case of a bear run. So the higher it is, the better. So the lower it is, the better it is. Next, we have the monthly statistics here. Here you can see that the number of months in consideration is 61. That is for the time period of 5 years that we have selected. Out of these total 61 months, the up months where the fund gave a positive return or a return that was above zero is 42 months. And the down months are 19 months where the fund gave a negative or a return that was below zero. So for these up months, you can see the best return the fund gave was 13.80%. You can also corroborate this on the chart here. If you just hover above this bar, you can see in the month of April 2020, the fund gave the best return that was 13.8%. And in the down months, you can see the worst return that the fund gave was minus 23. So also you can just hover above this bar here to see in the month of March 2020, the fund gave the worst return, that is minus 23. This is basically because of the COVID onset period that had happened during that time. So coming back up, we'll go to the asset allocation tab. Here in this, you have the first section, that is overview section, where you can see all the holdings that are in the fund. So here you can see there are total 75 holdings, and out of those, ICICI Bank is at the top, having the allocation of 8.19%. Also, you can see its category beside the percent, that is large cap for ICICI. If you just scroll below, that is mid cap for ICICI Pru Life. So this data is updated as of 31st May 2024. So our update cycle runs between 8th to 13th of every month. So the latest data for June will be updated by 13th July. Also, you have an Excel option here. If you want to download all these holdings, you can just click on that Excel option and it will be downloaded in an Excel format. If you just open this file, here you can see the name of the security, the asset class, and various other details. Coming back to the fund analysis, here also if you want to see the cash component of the fund, you can just see in this bar graph that around 7.51% is the cash component of our fund, and the equity component is around 92%. So next we have the position changes by month. Here you can see the largest increases or decreases, as well as the if new positions are added or removed from the fund for a particular month as compared to the previous month. So by default, you can see the month of May is selected. So for the month of May as compared to the month of April, the largest increase was of HDFC Bank of a magnitude of 1.18%. Also, you can see the new positions that were added as compared to April, that was Sri Cement Alchem Lab. So if you want to see this for the past few months, you can just click on this drop down and then select any month that you want to compare with the previous month to see the increases or the decreases as well as the positions that were added or removed. So if I click on April, now this data is showing the increases or decreases as compared to the previous month, that was March. Next, we have the positions over time. Here you can see the changes, that is month on month changes for security as well as by sector. So first we'll have a look by security. We'll take the example of Bharti Airtel. Here you can see in the month of April, it was showing a holding of 3.86, whereas it has increased in the month of May, that is 3.98. So basically, green signifies the increase and the red signifies the decrease as compared to the previous month. So this increase could be due to two reasons. First, there was an increase in the number of shares held, or there was an increase in the price of that stock. To identify this, you can just go to this drop down and then select shares in lakhs. Now you can see for Bharti Airtel, you can see in April it had 160.29 shares in lakhs. Now it has in May increased to 160.91 lakh shares. So the reason for increase in holdings was shares in this case. We'll take another example. If you just scroll below, you can see TVS Motors. The number of shares in lakhs has been constant for the past few months. But if you just change that back to percentage, you can see if you just scroll back to TVS Motors, here you can see there has been increase in the holdings, that is from 0.70 to 0.73. So the increase here was due to the increase in price of that stock. To have a look at it in detail, you can just click on the name of the stock that we are selected. And now you can see the stock performance chart here. So if you just zoom in a little bit, you can see the increase in the price trend here. Coming back to the fund analysis, now we'll see the changes that happened month-wise by sector by just clicking on this toggle here. Now you can see the latest data available here is of May 24, that is towards the left. And if you just scroll towards the right, you will get the past 12 months data here. So in the bank section, you can see the holdings have been increased as compared to April. So in April, it was 17.97 and in May, it is 18.81. So this shows that the fund is bullish in the bank sector. Whereas you can see all the holdings for all the sectors here. But if you want to quickly have a look at the top 10 equity sectors, you can just click on this equity sectors here. Now you'll be able to see a graph here where you can see the top 10 equity sectors. If you just click on any one bar, you'll be able to see the stocks and their allocation of that particular sector that you have clicked on. Next, we'll move to the peers tab. Here you have the fund at the top that we are analyzing, that is ICICI Blue Chip in blue color, whereas all the other large cap funds loaded below it. So this data is basically static and since inception. So if you want to do a period analysis for these funds, you can just go back to the NGEN Markets page and then go to the compare section. Now we had loaded the large cap category here. So you can do a peer analysis. And for example, if you take the CAGR column and then click on it, the data will be sorted in descending order. So you can see that the highest return, that is CAGR, was given by Quant Large Cap. So it was the best performing fund for the past 5 years that we had selected. If you take, for example, month to date returns, then you click on that and then the data will be sorted into descending order according to month to date returns. If you consider that, you can see that Motilal Oswal had given the highest month to date returns out of these category of funds. Now coming back to the fund analysis, now we'll go on to the rolling tab. Here you can see you have predefined 3 rolling windows selected by default, that is 260, 520 and 780. 260 basically signifies 1 year rolling period, where 260 is the number of working days. So if you want to do it for a 2 year or a 3 year, you can just multiply 260 by 1 by 2, that will give you 520 days, and by 3 that will give you 780 days. If you want to do a 4 year analysis, you can just multiply 260 by 4 and it will give you 1040 days. And you can edit that also in the rolling period and then click on run. So now you can see the rolling windows is 1 year, 2 year and 4 years. Now, if we come to rolling return statistics, you can see that for a period of 1 year, that is 260 days, the fund had given an average return of 20.82%. And the volatility it was facing was 14%. You can also see the highest return as well as the lowest return. Now, all these returns that are showing is absolute returns. If you want to see annualized returns, you can just click on this drop box and select annualized. Now you can see the data is updated accordingly. Also, if you can see, you have the highest return for a 260-day period of 67%. So if you want to see this in the graph, you can see the blue line denotes the 1 year rolling period. If you just zoom in and then hover above the highest point, you can see it is giving a return of 67 as we saw in the table. So immediately, if the investor had invested an amount before 260 days, he would have gotten the highest return on 22nd March 2020. Also, you can see the lowest return of the 1 year holding period is negative. Whereas if the investor keeps the money invested for a longer period, as you can see, the negative return that it is getting becomes the positive. That is, for a 4 year period, the worst return that the fund is generating is a positive one, that is 14.81%. If you just scroll below, you have these return ranges section available here. You have the by default selected the 1 year rolling period here. So these return ranges will show you the probability that the fund will return, that the fund will give a return between these return ranges. So for example, if you want to see that the fund, what is the probability that the fund will give a negative return? So we won't change the lower limit at it is, as it is taking the default worst return that the fund had given for this period as minus 9.35%. We'll input 0 in the higher class interval. And then you can see that there is a 2.29% probability that the fund will give a negative return. in a 1 year rolling period. So if you want, let's say if the client has a target range where he wants the return. So maybe his returns that he wants is from 15 to 40%. So you will just input that here as 15 to 40. And then if you click outside, you can see that the probability for the targeted return range is 42%. That is, if the investor invests for a period of holding period of 1 year, that is the 42.56% probability that he will get a return between 15 to 40%. Next, we have the drawdowns tab here. So this drawdowns basically tells us the strength of the fund to recover from the loss it had faced. So you get a list of all the top 10 drawdowns here. You can see the highest loss that the fund had incurred is minus 37%. Basically, it started from 16 Jan 2020 when the NAV of the fund was 45 and it fell till 28.32 till 23rd March. And after that, it started recovering. And it took around a period of 166 days to completely recover and reclaim the original NAV from where it had started falling, that is 45. And the recovery date you can see here is 10th November 2020. So if you want to corroborate this on the chart here, you can just zoom into this period and you can see if I just hover above this drawdown, you can see on 16th Jan, the fund had a NAV of 45 and then it started falling and it went up till 28 on 23rd March. After that, it started increasing and then it completely reclaimed its original NAV from where it had started falling on 10th November, that is 45.53. So basically, you can understand that the gray part in this chart is the loss period, whereas the white portion represents the recovery period. Also, you can see the magnitude of all the top 10 drawdowns in this bar chart available here. Next, we have the scenarios analysis. In this analysis, this basically means that you can do an analysis for a particular time period. As you can see, there are some built-in scenarios like the 2014 election, the lockdown periods. Also, you have an option to create custom scenarios. You can do so just by clicking the Add Custom Scenario. And you can just, let's say if you want to analyze the fund for a period of, let's say first half of this year. So we'll input the name of the scenario that we want, that is H124. And then we'll input the start date and we'll take the start date as 1st January 2024 and the end date as 26 June 2024 and then click on Save Custom Scenario. Once you have done that, you can see that in the list of the custom scenarios, a scenario has appeared. If you just click on that, you can see a chart and the statistics below here. So the blue line is the fund, whereas the black line is the benchmark. And you can see a clear outperformance here of the fund as compared to the benchmark. Also in the statistics, you can see that the excess return that the fund had given over the benchmark was 2.41%. Here you can see the volatility that the risk that the fund had taken was 14%. That was less as compared to the benchmark, but it gave a higher return, that is 15% as compared to the benchmark's return of 13%. Now we will have a look at the reporting options that are available. So if you just scroll back up, you can see there is a PDF option available here. If you just click on that, a PDF report would be generated. In order to add your organization's watermark, you can just check this box and then click on Create PDF. Once it is downloaded, you can open that PDF. So all the reports that are generated on a platform are co-branded. You can see the name of your organization and logo at the top left corner. If you just scroll below, you'll be able to see all the analysis of the fund that we had just done, like the asset allocation, the top holdings. ICICI Bank, as you can see, had the highest allocation, that was of 8.19%. You can see the equity sector exposures here. If you scroll below, you can see the performance statistics like the cumulative return, the CAGR, just like we saw. If you scroll below, you get the monthly statistics as well as the drawdowns that we had just seen. Now this is not editable. So if you want to edit this, you can just go back to the engines tab here, and then you have a PowerPoint option available where you can generate a PowerPoint presentation that is editable. So once you click on it, it is downloaded. And if you just go here, you can see once I open this PPT, this is the first page of the PPT. And if you just scroll below, you can see all the holdings in the second page. You can see a broad asset you can see a broad asset allocation here. You can see that the cash component, the equity components of the fund. We just go to the next slide. You can see the equity market exposures such as the large cap. It is 82.49%. You can see the top 3, top 5 exposures in the position concentration. In the next page, you have the equity sector exposures. As we saw, this fund is bullish on the bank sector, so it has the highest allocation of 18.81%. Next, if you just scroll below in the next slide, you can see the month-on-month changes sector-wise. So you can see the month-on-month changes for the various sectors here. Next, you have the performance statistics like the CAGR, annual volatility, cumulative return over the benchmark. In the next slide, you can see the rolling return statistics for the rolling periods that we had selected. So as you can remember that we had taken a rolling period of 4 years that was not by default set. So before generating the PPT, you have to make sure you make all the changes in the rolling period window so that you can reflect that in the PPT. Next, we have the drawdowns here. As you can see, there is a chart for the magnitude of the drawdowns as well as you can see the table for the drawdowns here. So this is the end and you can see the disclaimer here. So this PPT is editable. So if you want to add the scenario that we had just created, you could just go back to the scenarios tab here, and then with the help of this orange button, take a screenshot of this scenario that we had just created. Once it is downloaded, you can come back to the PPT and then add a master slide. And then you can insert that scenario that we had just created with the help of this. Yeah, you can just select the scenario and then you can edit it and then save it as a PPT. And then you can present it to your client. So basically this was it for the topic specific webinar. Now the forum would be open for questions. You can either unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you could just write down your questions in the chat box.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
And can you just explain again the rolling returns, which is absolute, and the analyzed return difference, please?
Sure, sure. Gaurav, can you go back to rolling tab? All right. So first of all, focus on the tables that are made right beside the chart, right? The first table is 260, next is 520, and the third column is 1040. That's ultimately 1 year, 2 year, and 4 years under consideration. Now, let's go back to absolute, please, from the drop down, right? Typically, when you change it to absolute, nothing from the first column is going to change, right? Because it's 1 year, right? Only when the period increases from a 1 year to a 2 year duration, or for that matter, any duration that is more than 1 year, the average return will increase, right? When it's a 2 year average rolling return in 520-day column, the average return has increased to a 40%, right? That's an average. On an average, if an investor would have stayed invested in this particular fund for any time period of 2 years between 2019 and 2024, these are the average 2 year returns, cumulative average 2 year returns that the investor would have got. Right now, this is a cumulative return. If you want to change this to an annualized basis, what is the annualized 2 year return? Then you simply use this toggle and change it to annualized. The moment you do that, it changes to 20.06. Previously, we had some 40 odd percent, right? Now it has changed to 20%. That means annualized return, if a investor stayed invested for a 2-year duration, is the average return of a 20.06. Now, where is this data coming from? To check this, you can simply hover on the black line that you can see, because the black line is indicator of 2-year rolling returns. Gaurav, can you just stay on a particular date on a black line, please? Right. So in this case, you see, if the investor would have invested exactly 520 days, that's 2 years, before 20th of Jan 2023, as is being highlighted in the box pointed by the arrow, the return that the investor would have got, annualized return, mind you, is a 15.90%. Right? So investor would have gotten a 15% return. Now, if you take the entire black line series average, that comes to a 20%. That is how we've arrived at the average rolling returns annualized basis for a 2-year time period on a rolling terms. Right? Now, if you typically change this to absolute, the black line, of course, will change. Right? And it will then start showing absolute basis, basically cumulative basis returns. That's the only difference between annualized and absolute.
Okay, basically that means absolute is kind of 2-year cumulative return.
Correct. Cumulative.
Average return.
Yes, 1 year. Yes, annualized to every year. So basically, we're annualizing it, right?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? Please let us know.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes,
Any possibility day wise NAV निकल सके?
definitely, sir. आप
Yeah.
जैसे scroll करोगे ऊपर, beside the name of the fund, I prove blue chip के बाजू में एकदम right hand side पे जाओगे तो आपको blue color coded एक button दिखेगा, which is a download button to download all the daily NAV series of this particular fund from the time period जो आपने set किया है. तो अभी जो हमने Excel download किया, that will show you the NAV series daily फॉर द लास्ट 5 years. क्योंकि हमने, आप लेफ्ट हैंड साइड पे देखिए, टाइम पीरियड जो चूज किया है वो 5 साल का चूज किया है, 25th June 2019 to 27th of June 2024. Now, if you open the Excel sheet, it will show you daily basis NAV. We will just show it to you 1 second. Right. So this is how you can open it. So daily from 25th of June 2019, जैसे क्या प्राइस मूवमेंट था NAV में of this fund will be available, and daily basis का returns भी.
Okay.
So this can be taken.
Hello.
Yes.
Is it possible to download on bulk schemes?
All right.
It's
So for
only
multiple
showing
schemes.
single AMC, na? It's only single scheme.
Yeah. All right. So for that you can use either the daily NAV reports that we have, right? So you'll have to go to the funds section.
Okay.
And we have daily NAV reports. ये daily generate होता है around 10:30 every single day for a working day. Right?
Yeah, I
So
know.
this you can download. Yeah.
जैसे
This you
अभी
can
आपने
download.
आई नो, जैसे अभी आपने मेरे को बताया कि पूरी एनएवी आईसीसीआई ब्लू चिप की डे वाइज ऐसे निकली है, ऐसे क्या मैं बल्क में बहुत सारी 5-6 स्कीमों का निकाल सकता हूँ?
नहीं सर, आपको 1 by 1 करना पड़ेगा. सर दैट्स बिकॉज वी आर service providers for research and analysis part. We are not into redistribution of data. Therefore, हम bulk download में ऐसे नहीं provide कर सकते. Our agreement with the data provider restricts us from doing that. तो ये तो available नहीं होगा, आपको 1 by 1 करना पड़ेगा.
ठीक है। अच्छा, मेरे को एक और चीज बताइए, मार्केट ऐप के बारे में तो पता है ना, पूछ सकता
हाँ,
हूँ?
बताइए ना।
उसमें ना हमारी कंपनी का नाम नहीं आता, सिर्फ लोगो आता है।
सर मार्केट ट्रैप जब भी आप क्लिक करोगे मार्केट टैब में, वहां पे बस लोगो ही दिखता है। नीचे मार्केट मतलब वो स्पेस नहीं है टू पुट द नेम ऑफ द कंपनी। आप यहाँ पे भी देखो, नीचे एंजन मार्केट्स मतलब सिर्फ लोगो आता है, नाम नहीं आता। इन ऑल द अदर पीडीएफ पीपीटी रिपोर्ट्स इट इज लोगो एज वेल एज द नेम ऑलवेज, लेकिन
आई नो।
मार्केट ट्रैप में बस लोगो आता है।
ठीक है मैम, ठीक है, थैंक यू।
हेलो मैम।
यस, टेल मी।
मैम ये पोजीशंस ओवर टाइम था, आपकी मंथली पोजीशन चेंजेस दिखाता है।
यस,
बेसिकली फंड ने किस टाइम पे कौन से स्टॉक में ऐड होंगे और कौन से पोजीशन एग्जिट किया है, तो ये
करेक्ट।
डेली बेसिस पे भी चेक कर सकते हैं या ये सिंस, क्योंकि
नहीं
आप एक
सर,
महीने का डाटा आप दोगे तो वो 8 या 30 तो उसको अपडेट होगा।
करेक्ट।
इट्स ना लाइक 1.5 month from the first of that particular month.
मैडम ये म्यूचुअल फंड हाउसेस जो है, एमएफ एएमसीज, ये एवरी मंथ डिस्क्लोज करते हैं डेटा। एएमसीज जैसे ही डिस्क्लोज करते हैं उसके बाद में इमीडिएटली वी ट्राई टू लूप इट इनटू आवर सिस्टम, एंड एज पर सेबी नॉर्म्स दे हैव टू डू इट बाय द फर्स्ट 10 to 15 days ऑफ द नेक्स्ट मंथ, राइट? तो कोई कोई एएमसी बहुत जल्दी रिलीज कर देते हैं। हमारा साइकिल 8th to 13th के बीच में रन होता है, तो 13th तक आपको सब एएमसीज का मिलेगा। लेकिन this is available only month on month. This is not available on daily basis. That's because AMCs do not even disclose this data on a daily basis. So we will not be able to provide this on a month or daily basis. It will always be month to month.
Okay ma'am.
Any further questions? Please let us know. All right, Gaurav, if there are no more questions, we can close for today.
So thank you everyone for joining. You can visit our YouTube page just by clicking on this YouTube button here. If you just click on this YouTube button on the NGEN Markets landing page, it will take you to our YouTube page. So here you can find in the playlist dedicated playlist for webinars, where all the webinars are uploaded. You can see 117 videos have been uploaded till now. And today's webinar will also be uploaded by next week. So thank you once again for joining, and see you next week with a new topic. Thank you.